Good evening, Mr. Majority Leader.
Good evening, Councilwoman. How are you?
Doing well, sir. Good evening, Councilwoman Hercules. Yeah.
Good evening, Councilwoman. How are you?
I think we're all set. Paul, it's good to see you again. Madam Treasurer.
Ah.
How are you,
Well,
Council?
No.
Councilwoman.
Councilman LeBron. All right. We shall get started. Councilwoman Hercules, hi. Right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining our virtual OMBGA committee meeting for today, March 20th, 2023. And I believe this is the first day of spring. I would like to call this committee meeting to order. We are streaming today from HPA-TV.org, channel 96 on Comcast, and channel 6032 on Frontier. And we have a jam-packed, quite of a jam-packed agenda, but I want to introduce my colleagues that sit on the committee with me. My name is Councilman TJ Clark. I serve as the majority leader for the City Council and co-chair for this committee. I'm joined by Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon, who is a voting member, Councilman Nick LeBron, who is a voting member, Councilwoman Tiana Hercules, who is a voting member, and Councilman John Gale, who is a voting member. So we're going to go right in order. I also want to recognize our esteemed treasurer, Treasurer Carmen Sierra and her team. And we also joined by Attorney Howard Rifkin, who was the Corporation Counsel. Item 1, our agenda is Council President Rosado with accompanying ordinance amending Article 17 of Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code, which had a public hearing of June 20th at 2022 at 7 p.m. and which has been item 5.1 on our agenda, which also had a transmittal from the Treasurer's Office. I don't see the Council President here to discuss this item again. That here she is joining, so I'll give her some time. And just want to recognize our co-chair for the committee, Council President Mally Rosado. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. We are just on item number 1. The chair will entertain a motion.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to postpone this item in committee.
Second.
Motion's been made by Council President Rosado, been seconded by Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon. Any discussion? Councilwoman Hercules.
Yeah, I'm just curious when this committee thinks that we will address this matter. It's been postponed for quite some time.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to answer that question.
Yes,
so now that we're going to enter into the budget season, it would be discussed in budget, during the budget period.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, seeing none, all in favor of postponing this item indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposals? Any abstentions? Hearing or seeing none, the ayes have it. This item is postponed in committee. Second item, Mayor Bronin with accompanying ordinance amendment of section 32-18 of the Municipal Code, which is the elderly tax relief that had a public hearing of February 21st, 2023, and which was item 6.1 on the agenda. There's just a matter of cleaning up business that we have to do in this committee. This item was on our agenda, and we actually ended up passing it at our last committee meeting. So we just need to discharge this item. Am I correct, Attorney Rifkin?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, you are correct. I think the motion would be to, rather than discharge it, you can just make a motion to favorably report it back to the council. It'll get on the agenda that'll be set on Wednesday, and we'll be able to take it up on the 27th.
Okay. Thank you, Attorney Rifkin.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to send this item back favorably to the council body.
Second.
Motion's been made by Council President Rosado, seconded by Councilwoman Shirley Surgeon. Any other questions? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor of passing this item favorably indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it. This motion is passed, and this item is being sent back to council with a favorable recommendation. Item number 3, Mayor Broner, with accompanying ordinance, accompanying resolution, authorize the city to enter into a lease located on the 9th floor of 280 Trumbull Street to be utilized by Hartford Public Schools Central Office. Item 3.9 on the February 27th agenda, and we have the chair of the School Building and Construction Committee, Mr. Paul Drummond, who is doing a very good job on the School Building Committee. So, Mr. Drummond, I will pass it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening or good afternoon, everyone. So before you tonight is a lease for the Hartford Public Schools to move out of Buckley from April 1st of this year until July. Let me bring up the Chairman. May I share the screen?
Stand by. One second.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate
You're
you.
welcome.
All right. So again, Buckley High School is at a point to where we are going to start the next phase of construction. We received the bids. The project team, Arcadis and Newfield, are working through that bid number. The committee leadership, Hartford Public Schools, as well as the mayor and the COO to move this project forward. Part of that, when the construction starts to happen again, the Hartford Public Schools administration is in the space to where it would be deemed unusable during construction, to where they would be any bit productive during the period of construction. So the plan is to move them out of that space April 1st, start to move them out. It's a 29-month lease, 28 with 28 rental payments. April is the free month for moving in there. It's the 9th floor of 280 Trumbull, so the Hartford Public Schools can operate efficiently and without disturbance from the construction happening on the next phase of Buckley High School. Chairman, I'm happy to take any questions beyond what I've just stated.
Any questions from my colleagues so far? Councilwoman Surgeon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Drummond. So how long have they been in Buckley when they moved from the GFOX building?
June of 2020, Councilwoman.
So they've been there for 2 years.
Yes.
And do you know the cost of that move?
I do. So totality, apologies. So the monthly payments are $40,363.67 cents per month, Councilwoman. The total, my counterpart from Hartford Public Schools is on the call with us, Sherry Davis-Gouge, the COO for the Hartford Public Schools. If I may, Councilwoman,
Sure.
ask her to chime in here and give us the total. Sherry, do
Sure.
you have that total amount?
I do. So the question is about the lease we are considering, or was the question about how much did it take to move from 960 to our current location?
The
From
former.
96. Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yes, Sherry.
It's the total amount of the move in totality or just the lease?
Well,
The
you
le-
moved from 960 to Buckley 2 years ago. So what was the cost in moving there? And did you, that was, let me finish with that first question first.
And I'm sorry, I don't have that cost in front of me,
Okay.
but I will certainly bring it back.
Thank you. So then to you, Mr. Drummond, um, were we aware that, moving from, I know the lease expired at G Fox, moving from G Fox to Buckley, for 2 years, why would you not move into another location until the construction is finished at Buckley?
Councilwoman, that's a great question. And in the beginning of the project, my understanding coming in late to this, Councilwoman, is that the state had recommended strongly that the Hartford Public Schools central admin offices move into the space as soon as possible. So with the state's strong recommendation, the city and the project team moved forward with that strong suggestion, Councilwoman.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Now they're going to be on the 9th floor. I know a lot of parents, children, comes to the Board of Education. How accessible is the 9th floor? And is that going to be enough room for the entire board staff?
If I may, it's the 9th floor for staff, and as well as we're going to have the first floor where we will have our welcome center.
So you're going to be in 2 different floors?
Yes. So when you enter that building, there is what used to be a retail space on the first floor. And so therefore the parents would enter and go into that space to be, that's where we will have our welcome center, where we support families with registration as well other support services that they may need.
And so if they need to speak with anyone, they would have to, maybe staff would have to come downstairs to them?
Oh,
Is
no, we're
No?
staffed just like we have now. We're in a welcome center, and the
Mhm.
staff actually sit in the welcome center. So the registration staff, as well as the Office of Family and Community Partnership staff, they are housed in the welcome center.
And from Mr. So you guys going to be there for the next, 3 years until 2025?
Yes, that was the request from the program manager.
And Mr. Drummond, so now will Buckley be ready by 2025 to bring them back?
That is the plan, Councilwoman.
And just in case they are not, is there any opportunity for an extension of the lease?
The way the lease is written now, there's 3 months, 3 more additional months opportunity to capture, Councilwoman, before there needs to be a renegotiation of the lease. So they're due to move back in the September of 25, but the lease can be extended to the end of the year, December 31st.
So looking at what you have your slide up, it looks like it's going to be approximately about 800,000 to including the lease payment and moving.
Yeah, I would, if I may,
Please.
I would say this was our initial projection. It's actually less now. It's about 1.4 million.
So moving
The reduction was due to the city of Hartford already has a network in that building, so the fiber just had to be shared down to the 9th floor, and so that saved about 200,000 in the cost. And in addition, the space is plug and play, meaning that the furniture and other items are already there, the furniture and the fixtures, so that also reduced our moving costs.
And this is like off the record, is there no empty place in any of the schools that would have been able to house the staff?
Right. So I will say to you, that was our first place. We vetted our schools as well as property owned by the city. And during COVID and just around our district model of excellence, the available spaces in schools have been turned into wellness spaces for our students. And so we went through all our schools to see if we had a footprint. There's about 160 staff in Hartford Public Schools, and there was just no way to fit them into a building appropriately.
So this 1.4 is not in your budget. This will be city's payment. Am I understanding this correctly?
Yes, Councilman Surgeon. So the thought is in the action moving forward is to argue that this is an eligible cost to the project. So when we run this through the project, we're expecting 95% reimbursement for the move and the lease, the parking and everything that is affiliated with having to move out. And we're going to argue that it's swing space, Councilwoman.
You're going to argue, but it's not been approved by the state, right?
Not at this moment, no.
Okay.
Also, too, just want to chime in here. This will be a part of Buckley High School's renovation project budget.
Which has been approved by the, didn't we approve this several months ago? When
The
we
original Buckley, the original high school renovation was a couple of years ago.
And then wasn't there an additional funds needed?
For
So,
go ahead.
please.
Go ahead, Paul.
Most recently, through you, Chair, Councilwoman Surgeon. So a few things, a lot's going on in the city of Hartford, a lot of great stuff for the Hartford school system. Most recently, you may be referring to Burns Latino, which is one of those schools that we also needed to increase the GMP to get the project over fully funded. So that did become before council for a raise in the ordinance. That was approved by the Department of Administrative Services, and in that budget is in line right now. And we're trying to do the same with Buckley.
Okay, so we just haven't gone to the state for approval as yet.
That's
accurate. Kids, you guys have to move by April 1st, which is in a couple of days. You need, let me make sure I'm understanding you, the city to approve this and pay for this and hopefully to be reimbursed.
So the way we're going to go about this, Councilwoman, is we're going to run it through the project. So there's already approved funds for the project, and there's money available to pay these lease payments through the project. So neither the city nor the Board of Education at this moment needs to come up with any money. And when we go through the process of editing our ed specs to incorporate the swing space that we feel is a reimbursable expense, and we go through and capture the additional funding needed to get this project over the finish line. It is my drive, Councilwoman, and our hope that all these costs will be reimbursed.
Okay, and just an expectation date, Mr. Drummond, maybe another 2-3 months?
I hope sooner than that, Councilwoman. I would say expectation a month is too long for me, so I'm hoping that we can get this behind us sooner than later.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Drummond. If I remember correctly, you did a presentation at the Planning and Zoning Committee, and in that CIP fund, there was about 800,000 that was in your presentation. Is this part of the 1.4 million? So
that the projection for Buckley High School city share, I believe, was around 6.8.
Right. I think it was 690 or something like that.
Something like that, Councilwoman. Thank you. So that is our projected cost from July 1st of 23 until June 30th of 24. So the next fiscal year, what we try to do to show council how much is going to be on the city share side is kind of give that dollar amount and how we anticipate the project cash flow going for that particular fiscal year. That, yes, I guess the short answer to your question is in part, those funds will be covering this lease and all associated costs for the move.
And then you're going to go back to the state to get the 95 reimbursement of the 1.4 million.
Yes.
I'm trying to, it's not adding up for me. So maybe somebody else can try to explain it to me.
Let me try a different.
Councilman Gluban, because it's not adding up for me.
I just let Mr. Drummy finish his.
Okay, sorry, sir.
I want to reframe it a little bit. So right now, Buckley High School project has $149 million appropriated for this project. Approved by the state, priority list was $149 million. Of that $149 million, we've spent, and I don't know the total numbers now, let's say just for whole numbers, for the purposes of this conversation, we spent 40 million out of the 149. So right now in the project, approved funds to spend, we have $109 million to spend as we're speaking. We want to make sure that all of this new GMP that's coming before us, that we want to make sure that the state is going to cover the additional costs to bring this project over the finish line before we release any more contracts. All that said, going back to this specific item before you tonight, Councilwoman, there's $109 million to use to pay any type of lease payments in the interim until we get the whole project situated.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Drummond.
You're welcome.
And also, too, I just want to add, it's not uncommon for the city and board to go back to the state to seek costs that the city believes and the board believes that's reimbursable that was not initially discussed at the time of the project and the budget being crafted.
Even though they suggested that you move, Councilman Clark?
I'm sorry?
Even though the state was the one who suggested that the move go to Buckley?
Right, well, it was as Mr. Drummond said, it was the suggestion of the state, and this is why we are in the predicament that we are right now, because questions were raised at the time when this was presented to the school building committee and to the board as to would it be feasible to relocate central office at the time and let them be present in the school at the time that the construction was taking place in the rest of the school. So these questions were asked, but as Mr. Drummy stated, that this was heavily impressed upon the city and to the board to move forward with the relocation of central office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Council President Rosado.
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you. I'm just kind of echoing back on Councilwoman Surgeon's question. So my first question is, does the Board of Ed in its entirety have to be under the same building, all the departments? And did we, exhaust our due diligence of any of the properties that the city owns, where they cannot occupy that space?
If I may?
Yes.
Thank you. So I'm glad you doubled back to that question because I didn't feel like I thoroughly answered it. So what I will say is that we went school by school, and between our community partners and the wellness spaces in our buildings and the limited parking at our schools, we did that. That's the first place we started. And so even in terms of like separating departments, it would have still been a hard ask due to the configuration of a school, as well as the network needs of our staff in central office. And then the second piece of your question, we did look at 110 Washington Street, and we worked with Nat Gale at the time, and there would have been significant renovation costs to that building to make it usable for central office.
So when we talk about significant costs, more than what is going to be charged for the lease? Because that building belongs to the city, so I mean,
Yeah,
if
it was
to be
significant.
renovated, right?
Yes, I would say that in my conversations with Mr. Gale, it just didn't seem like it was feasible in terms of the cost that was going to be, the time it would take to renovate, as well as the associated costs. So we're doing our due diligence. Our kids have been out the building since 2020. The original construction period was supposed to end in 2024. And now we're at 2025. And based on what the program manager is telling us, if we do not relocate within this next summer months, it could extend the project to 2026.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Davis Gooch, there's a school that is that's been closed and unoccupied, Simpson Waverly. Was that considered far as a relocation?
Yeah, and I am sorry, Mr. Clark, I cannot remember. There is a significant reason, and it could be about the systems in the building, but it was considered. And for the life of me in this moment, I cannot figure why we said Simpson Waverly was not an option, but I can, as you continue the meeting, I will look for that reason.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Councilman LeBron.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Davis Gooch, you mentioned someone, you said you spoke to Gail. Can you just let us know who Gail is, who advised you?
Councilman, yeah, she did reference his name. She said Nat Gale.
Nat Gale.
Nat Gale, okay. There's a lot of Gales in the city. So
a lot of wind in the city too.
Yeah. The next question is for Mr. Drummy, through you, Mr. Chair. GMP, just for the general public, can you tell us what GMP stands for?
Of course, thank you, Councilman. So GMP is guaranteed maximum price on these huge, massive projects that the state funds. Part of the process is to get a designer on board and then get a CM, construction manager, on board. And they go through all the design and calculate the budget, the oversight, all of what they think is going to bring this project over the finish line. And then they present that GMP before the town for approval. And really what it is, it's a guarantee from the CM that they're going to perform, and this will be the maximum price of that performance. And typically on massive, I say typically as we're going back to the well, is at the end of the project when it's reconciled, if there's any leftover allowances or contingencies within the actual GMP, those will be returned to the city.
And through you, Mr. Chair, Ms. Davis Gooch, you mentioned network needs. When you talk about network needs of the central office, are we talking about like internet? Are we talking about the ability to be next to each other? What does network needs specifically mean that everyone has to be together? Well, I'll circle back to that question. She's researching something. So I'll move on. Mr. Drummy, and through you, Mr. Chair, when we moved to Buckley, is it correct that the understanding was that we wouldn't have to move back, or was that always part of the long-term plan that we were going to go to Buckley for a temporary period and then have to leave?
Councilman, this would be an assumption that not being here at the time, I can certainly ask for the history from our program manager. But my understanding from what I've heard to date, Councilman, is that it was anticipated that they would be able to stay there while the construction was going on.
Right. So, maybe it's not you, but Mr. Drummond, through you, Mr. Chair, was this recommendation to move through Buckley part of the recommendation that was overseen by Costa Diamantis? Is that the fact and the case?
That is a fact, Councilman.
Okay. So, and is that cost the $2 million that we're under federal investigation for because of Costa's recommendation?
Could you repeat the question, Councilman? I apologize.
So right now, we're under federal investigation for $2 million that was overseen or encouraged by the state that over this construction oversight at Buckley. And so where we're now trying to get reimbursed from the state, the 95%, and now that's under investigation. So there was words being used such as strong recommendation, those type of things. So when we initially moved to Buckley, that was Costa recommendation. And then B, now I just want to know distinctly, is this part of the federal investigation, this recommendation specifically?
I don't believe so, Councilman. I believe the investigation is due to the owner's project manager being asked to oversee a project that already had a representation.
Project manager, correct. And
Yeah.
This was one of the recommendations.
My understanding.
In essence, it would fall under that umbrella, right?
I think that might be a stretch. Right?
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay.
Until we have confirmation between our legal department and the state.
Right. Got it. So the next question I have through you, Mr. Chair, is this recommendation to now move to 960 and this reimbursement. We heard strong recommendation for us to move by these contractors. We've already fell under, we are, like, what do they say? Fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So now we have another strong recommendation. Do we have that in writing?
I don't believe so, Councilman, but I'll certainly look into that with our Cadis ONG.
Yes. And so, and this question is for Attorney Rifkin. Attorney Rifkin, should we recommend that any move or approval be in writing as it would behoove us because we fell under this before?
Councilman LeBron, sorry, I'm just at a loss as to how to answer that question. This, what's before you is the authorization to proceed with a lease to accommodate central office. The question about whether the direction of the state for the Board of Education central office to move in to Buckley while the project was going forward. I'm sorry, I just don't see a nexus between that and your question.
I'm sorry. So just to clarify the question, should it not, if we're being recommended by the state to move and we're asking for 95% reimbursement, shouldn't we get some kind of documentation saying that we, in fact, that this move, in fact, can be reimbursed?
Well,
if I may,
through you, we're not being recommended by the state. What we're being asked to move out of Buckley because to undertake the construction, that's the reconstruction of Buckley that's currently planned, the central office can't be there.
Yeah, I guess that's who is making that recommendation?
So the contractor that we hired to oversee and manage the project.
The same contractor that allowed hospitals to.
Wait. Point of order, please. Just let Attorney Rifkin finish.
No, I mean, Paul could clarify this, but we're talking about apples and oranges with respect to the question of the federal, the federal investigation into what or what didn't happen with respect to Buckley and other school projects.
Okay, I don't think it's through you, Mr. Chair, apples and oranges. I think we were made a recommendation that to currently move to Buckley, and now we're being given a recommendation to move to finish the construction project. And I'm just asking, does it make sense for us to get whoever's recommending to provide it to us in writing?
Yeah, so let there be clarification. I believe Mr. Drummy has some clarification for us. So, Councilman, if you are all set with your questions, I'll.
Well, I mean, I think Ms. Davis Gooch came back to answer the network question.
Yeah, so I'll let Mr. Drummy finish first. Go ahead, Mr.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. Councilman LeBron, so nobody's recommending that we move out. What our argument's going to be to why we should have 95% reimbursement on this move is because we should have never moved in the first place.
Right. Exactly.
So we were told to move into a place that we should have never moved into.
Exactly.
That's the long and the short. The administration cannot operate with all the noise in and around the area that they're going to be functioning. So that is the reason for the move. It's for their day-to-day being able to properly operate and serve the community is the reason. So nobody's recommending it. It's deemed a necessity from the public school system, from the central office, because they are even with the soft work, not really soft, but the demo and the abatement that happened while they were in place, the noises were too loud and disruptive to their day-to-day, Councilman. So they knew what was coming, and in preparation for the big construction, was thinking about where they could go. They did their diligence throughout the portfolio to see how and what made sense, what we owned. As Sherry stated, couldn't really find something that made perfect sense. So this was what they felt makes perfect sense.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Drummy. Can you just do us a favor, and if you're finished sharing the screen, if you can stop sharing it.
Oh, of course.
All right. Thank you.
Yes.
Ms. Davis Gooch.
So first I'll respond to the Simpson Waverly question. That building had been turned back over to the city, but it had been unoccupied for many years. So I believe that the construction cost for that building would exceed what it would have taken for 110 Washington Street. And then if it's okay, I just wanted to clarify that from our end, what the construction program manager shared was that the design of the high school was finalized after we moved into the building. And so as we talk about phase 7, which includes roof replacement, demolition of exterior walls, the addition of windows and the change to the outside exterior, those things would not allow us to be in an occupied building because the roof is actually going to come off the building. I also think that there was kind of a time in the initial Buckley High School renovation. It was Buckley High School's renovation. And then along the way became the addition of central office occupying the space there on campus as well. So when that happened, I think there was conversations around the cost of maintaining the rental fees at 960, along with building out the space at Buckley campus. And so I just wanted to add that point of, in the original specification, the addition of the central office being on the Buckley campus was not in the original spec, and that came along later. So I thought that was just important to note.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Davis Gooch. So Is it, Councilman, I see, is it safe to say that there is no inhabitable building that the Board of Ed or city owns that central office can be temporarily relocated at this time until construction is completed at Buckley? Ms. Davis Gooch?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm sorry.
no, that question was for
Like
you.
a city building? No,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes, we did our due diligence. Yes, absolutely. Between the community partners and the reconstruction of space during COVID to support our wellness in our buildings, the answer is no.
Okay. Councilman Gale.
And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I said it before, but parking would be just a huge other hurdle for us.
All right, Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Davis Good, you mentioned the rent at 960, and I'm just wondering what was the yearly rent, if you recall, that we were paying to be at 960 Main?
So I'm not going to misspeak, but I'm going to say it was approximately $2 million per year. But I just want to please go on the record that I would like to come back with the actual costs. Okay.
I'm not holding you to it, but I do recall it being north of $1 million a year. It was sort of my gut. And just to sort of bring this back to some of Councilman LeBron's comments, it's interesting to note that the current cost for this lease at Trumbull, when adding all the parking and the lease payments together, is going to come to a total of $725,000 a year. Had we never moved and stayed at 960, we might end up we might be paying more than here. So coming back to this, I suppose in some respects you might say we're going to end up with a net savings had we never moved at all. But speaking of that $725,000 a year, the rent payment is listed as $40,000 a month, and that's great because that's $17 a square foot. Where can you get downtown space for $17 a square foot? But then there's parking, and when you add the parking in, that's 1/3 of the total lease payments. So that that's where I get the $725, and that works out to be more like $25.50 a square foot that we're paying for space. So my question is the expectation that this entire yearly lease, parking, and lease space is going to be reimbursed at 95%? And that's for either you or Paul, whoever can answer that one.
Through you, Chair, I'll take this one. Councilman Gale, yes, the expectation is it's a cost that was borne on the city of Hartford and should be a reimbursable cost.
All right, thank you very much.
And if I may, I think what we see in the lease, the parking garage is actually owned or managed by the Hartford Parking Authority. So I think there's going to be some flexibility in that per car rate that we just haven't landed on yet.
Oh, well, that would be great.
Yeah.
The state will be happy since they're paying 95% of it. We hope. I have no other questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Davis-Gooch.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilwoman Hercules, I don't know, did I see your hand up? Okay. I did. Oh, Council President Rosado, you have your hand up again, or?
Yes. I just have a couple of more questions. So, when is it expected that they have to move out of Buckley again? My question again.
So through you, Chair, Councilwoman Rosado, the expectation is to start moving and getting everybody situated in the free month of April, and then be ready to operate in May.
Okay, so we still have not signed off on this, but it is expected that they start moving in April, which is 2 weeks from now.
Mm-hmm.
And Trumbull Street is all set and ready for you to move in? the space there?
Yes, because it's, may I?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Yes, the tenants that were in the building actually left all the furniture. And as I mentioned before, the networking was already there. So it was easy for MHIS to, will be easy for MHIS to come in and be able to get that network up and running. So it's truly was just a matter of moving cubicle spaces.
Okay. And once again, and I hate to be redundant on this. So the reason why the decision of moving into the adult ed building is because the building needs a lot of reconfiguring inside of it?
Working with Mr. Gale, Nat Gale, we went into the building, we looked at the spaces. It was just very old. The HVAC in the building wasn't working. So it would be another project to get that building up to speed for anyone to occupy it.
Okay, and how long, again, do you estimate being on Trumbull Street?
We hope to summer of 2025. And if I may just speak a little about the transition months, right? So yes, we wanted to be able to start in April, and that was to make sure that we're able to meet our school's needs with the end of the year closeouts. So it was just going to be a phased in approach. So, okay, so we're clear that that may not happen by May, and that's why we're phasing in.
And, you know, I have to say, I'm a little bit concerned about how this process has been handled, right? Because obviously, I can say that this was known ahead of time that eventually they would have to move out of Buckley to finish that construction. And so now here we are a month before deciding, you know, and approving this, when if this had been thought about before, maybe we would have had a location or had plenty of time to find a location to move the district out of there. So I'm very puzzled as to why they moved it there, you know, and not find another location from the beginning, since they knew it was going to be from, I don't know, I can't remember when they started, until 2025. That is, you know, maybe 4 years out of where they used to be located before.
If I may?
Yes.
I would share that the first time we understood that there may be a need to leave the building was October 2021. So I would say that the program manager and the construction manager were doing their due diligence to see if they could keep it as an occupied renovation. I hear about the conversations that may have happened before the relocation, but Hartford Public Schools was notified in October 2021. And it was actually going to be like a summer, like a 9-week. But I believe due to the impact of COVID, as well as just where we are in terms of the market and the monies, that they're trying to accelerate and stay on schedule. So again, as I mentioned earlier, it was a planned it was going to be renovated, and we were supposed to be in the building. That this, I believe, is phase 7, and please correct me, Mr. Drumming, but those things they thought would be managed in that 9-week period initially. Again, it was the roof replacement, the demolition of walls, and new windows. That work, phase 7 is what is driving this.
And I just have one last question, Mr. Chair. So I think Nat Gill has been gone for 2 months. How long have you been in the process of finding another location?
October 2022.
Okay.
Because that 9-week period, we were going to try to structure, whether it's in buildings or see what we could do remotely. But that actually came to a halt based on the construction team need to go back and rebid out some phases. So then that also took time. There was also a change in leadership at the Office of School Grants. And so there was some legislation that was needed to support the central administrative office staying inside the project. So there was funds for that. So there were other reasons for the delay in construction that had to do with the state leadership changing.
Okay, and my last question, I promise, is when did you find Trumbull Street? In what month?
Paul, when did I send you that email? I'm sorry. I started having these conversations within the last 2 to 3 months.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. The chair will now entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I think this has been a very unfortunate incident all the way around, but it looks like we're about to at least make some lemonade out of some lemons. And so I would move this back to council with a favorable recommendation, with the hopes that among other things, we're going to try to get the students back at Buckley High much sooner by doing this. So I move it back favorably for those reasons. Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
would
Councilman Gill.
second that, Mr. Chair, but also knowing that I totally agree with Councilman Gale. It's an unfortunate situation, and I am looking forward to hoping we can get the 95 reimbursement. So, the city is not, caught for somebody else's mistake, and we have to pay that, that 1.4 million. So I will second that resolution going back to the council.
Thank you. Motion has been made by Councilman Gale, seconded by Councilwoman Surgeon to send this back to council with a favorable recommendation. Are there any discussion? I have an item. I see Councilman LeBron. I think Mr. Drummy and Ms. Davis Gooch has been doing a phenomenal job of trying to look at this school building construction project forward. They both can tell you that there have been some hidden mysteries regarding construction for Buckley that continues to get uncovered as construction continues to take place. And so that I think they've been very crafty and due diligent in trying to be creative as possible to get this project moving in a timely manner with some of these hiccups. So just wanted to give that explanation and kudos to them on continuing to move this forward. Councilman Gale, I'm sorry, Councilman LeBron.
And kudos, I echo your sentiment through you, Majority Leader, Mr. Chair. This is no knock on Paul Drummy or Ms. Davis Gooch. I know that they work diligent and are dedicated. What I will say is that this is an apples to apples conversation. We were told to move by one person or wherever to Buckley. And that cost us, and now we're being recommended, or whatever language you want to use, to move to 960 because the construction's not there, on the hopes that we're going to get reimbursed. But we were hoping on the first end to get reimbursed as well. It seems like we're walking into the same construct with our fingers crossed. And so I pray that the hopes that we have on this reimbursement get fulfilled. I generally don't like to do business on hope, but we'll go with the audacity of hope today. And so I'll be voting favorably.
Council President.
Yes, and I just want to echo Majority Leader Clark's comments. I thank you both, Ms. Davis Gooch and Mr. Drummy, for your due diligence and your hard work. So thank you.
Any other discussion? Hearing or seeing none, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. It's unanimous. This item is passed back to council, which will take place on this coming Monday at 7 o'clock. Thank you very much, Mr. Drummy and Ms. Davis Gooch. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
All right. Our final item is Mayor Broner with a company resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of not exceeding $400 million for the city of Hartford refunding bond, item 3.2 on the March 13th, 2023. And we will pass it over to our treasurer's office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you and the members, today we're here to discuss the City of Hartford Special Obligations Refunding Bonds Resolution. This is a very unique transaction. We have about 49 people involved. Today we have the city's CFO, Leanne Rawls, Corporation Counsel, Howard Griffin, our two state treasurer, excuse me, I got something in my throat. The bond counsels, we have David Panico for Robinson and Co., and we have Danielle Brown from Shipping and Goodwin. My staff, Shay, Chelsea, and Martin, who's the deputy treasurer. And like I said, this is a unique transaction. It takes collaboration, expertise, experience, and effective communication. And that's what we've been doing so far. So about 8 years ago, if you recall, the city realized that given the amount of tax exempt property in the city of Hartford and the insufficient pilot payments received from the state, it could no longer raise the mill rate to cover the obligation. And so we requested assistance from the state. The state entered into a contract for financial assistance with the city and paid the city general obligation bonds, originally $540 million, now is $395 million. Some of the city bonds can now be refinanced to achieve debt service savings similar to when you refinance your mortgage at a lower rates. This will reduce the contract assistance payments. The state will save approximately $11.4 million over 10 years or 8.4% value basis, subject to change based on interest rates. The refunding bonds will be secured solely by the state payments under the contract for financial assistance as amended, not the city. The refunding bonds will be issued pursuant to a trust indenture and a first supplemental indenture which provides the detail for the refunding bonds. This bond resolution will approve the documents, provide for execution and delivery by the mayor and the city treasurer, and other action required to issue the refunding bonds. The state treasurer, Office of OPM, and MARB will also approve the transaction. I'd like to also thank the Secretary of State as well as OPM and the Deputy Treasurer for working with us on this big transaction. And with that, I'd like to allow my technical staff or people to answer any other additional question that you may have.
Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Attorney Panicle, it's good to see you. Any questions from my council colleagues? Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you. So my first question, I'm wondering, was this an idea that was brought to us by the state? Who is it who first decided that there could be money saved by refunding, by issuing these refunding bonds?
Yes, it's Dave Panico, city's bond counsel. Yeah, the underwriters have been monitoring these bonds for the state of Connecticut for some time and indicating that so much could be saved at certain points during the last 6 years or so. But now, due to change in tax law, the bonds are currently refundable, which means the transaction can take place despite changes in tax law. So the state really, at this point, ran some numbers to come up with the transaction and the approximate savings.
And can I also then therefore conclude that this really is not going to cost the city of Hartford anything? We're involved because they are our bonds, but since the state agreed to take over the payment of these bonds some 6 or 7 years ago, we're helping the state save what sounds like quite a bit of money.
Well, the state helped us save money, took over our debt. So yes, there is no cost to us. That's correct, Councilman.
In the bond issue.
Mm-hmm.
There's no cost to the city of Hartford for doing this, but the bonds will in fact be issued by the city of Hartford. Am I correct?
That's correct.
About that?
That's correct.
All right, I have no other questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Surgeon.
Mr. Chair, Madam Treasurer, approximately how much is this going to save the state? and we want to thank the state for helping us out, as you said, 6 years ago. But just want to know how much is this the refinancing, how much would this save the state?
Was estimated to save approximately 11.4 millions, but that depends on the interest rate, so.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions from my colleagues? I just wanted to thank Treasurer Sierra and your team and Dave Panico and our Speaker of the House, Representative Ritter, and the rest of our delegation for being supportive of the city of Hartford and helping us to maintain our fiscal stability. So thank you very much for your hard work and what you've done to keep the city afloat. The chair will now entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to second what you said about thanking the state of Connecticut, pulling us from the brink of bankruptcy.
We were there, John. We were there.
We were there, and this was a very key component of fiscal stability for the city of Hartford that has served us exceedingly well over the last 6 years, to the extent where we've been successful with the MARB in meeting their requirements, and we've been able to lower our mill rate to encourage our taxpayers to perhaps grow our tax base and save our taxpayers some money. And so with all that said, I would like to move this back to council with a favorable recommendation with, again, special thanks to all those who've done the hard work who are on the screen today and all those in the background.
Is there a second?
Second that, Mr. Chair, and totally agree with everything Councilman Gale says. Kudos to our treasurer and everyone who's helped us.
I second the motion.
All right, thank you very much.
And also, I want to thank everyone through you, Mr. Chair, to our Madam Treasurer, Sierra, to Mr. Speaker, and also to Dave Panico, which I'm having the pleasure of seeing who he is right now. I have not met him before, but thank you for writing that very well put together resolution for us. Thank you all.
Motion has been made and properly second. Any other discussion? And let the record reflect the sentiments of my committee colleagues on the hard work that everybody put in. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it. Is unanimous. This motion is passed and is sent back to council with a favorable recommendation for our next meeting on March 27th. All right. Seeing that we have no other business to discuss, just want to remind the general public that we have a public hearing that begins at 7 o'clock and also on Monday, May 27th at 5 o'clock is the mayor's final State of the City address. The 6 o'clock hour will begin. Actually, no, because I'm used to this being during the time we have public hearings. So 5 o'clock is the State of the City address, which is going to be in council chambers, I believe. And then we will have our 7 o'clock meeting back in council chambers as a hybrid model. So thank you very much for everyone tuning in. Wish you the best and take care. Have a good night.
You too. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.